Hello, everybody, and welcome to the LFC Transfer Room live stream with myself, Charlie, Colin, and Willem. Thank you guys so much for joining us on this Sunday evening before we get ready for week 2 of the Premier League fixtures. A couple of topics that we'll get into today. Obviously, Arne Slot seems to want to play Ryan Gravenberch in that double pivot 6 position. Did fairly well against Ipswich in the second half. Lost a couple of jewels in his first half, but that was across everybody across the pitch. So it's nice to see that there was an adjustment in the second half. Then we also have, is it kind of time to panic? Because I have two people on this panel with me today that definitely would say yes. We'll see if there's a third in Colin. I would say not yet until the transfer window closes, but I'm sure we'll have a lot of discourse on that throughout the stream if Willem has the energy for it. With that, then we also then have the Echo coming out and basically saying with the move back to, and Charlie will tell you how much waffle this is, but coming back to going for first choices only under Edwards, which seems completely stupid considering we never went for first choices. Salah wasn't a first choice. That kind of a way. There's plenty of other options that are that where we've bought lesser known players and made them into stars, if that makes sense. And then obviously we just take a look back at how the first week of the Premier League action has kind of gone, how we sort of seen ourselves look up in the in our new system, how we adapted, how subs were made with Jarell Kwanzaa coming off at halftime. Obviously, people thought that he looked a bit pissed. I think it might have lit the fire under his ass. So we'll see everything about that. I'm just after seeing in the group chat that Real Sociedad are currently losing and Martin Zubimendi is on the bench. So no sympathy from this side of the English channel, I'm sure. But we will get into everything. And before we do, make sure to like and subscribe if you haven't done so already. Make sure that you have your notifications on for all future streams and videos so that you never miss out. If you're watching over on Twitter currently or X at the moment, make sure to jump over to our YouTube page. The link is in our bio on our Twitter bio, so make sure to jump into that or our X bio. But without further ado, we'll jump into the first topic, and I have a couple of stats and everything lined up ready to go that I can share and show, because just upon first glance, the idea of Ryan Gravenberch being the 6 instead of Martin Zubimendi doesn't necessarily seem nonsense. But I'll get everybody's opinions on it first of all. Colin, I'll come to you first, and I'll throw the question to you. Seeing how you see Ryan Gravenberch, his profile, how he plays, big, long, lengthy kind of a player, seems to be able to dribble and drive the ball forward with the ball at his feet, and he's able to pass it forward as well, progressive passes. How do you see him fitting into Slot's number 6 role, considering the profile and player that Martin Zubimendi is the one that is essentially now the template, because Liverpool have kind of shown their hand?
Yeah, I think he fits really, really well. I sort of think he always did, despite what Jurgen might have been asking of him. I think that this sort of positional... I think it fits his skill set better than, frankly, being really high does. I don't think that was ever really changed, but I don't think that also is an excuse not to be purchasing the player that you want, or to not be bolstering that that place in the team. If that's something that has been identified that is a need, I actually don't understand. It doesn't matter if your first choice guys are playing great or not. If you've identified that as a place that needs reinforcement, then there's no good reason not to be purchasing the person that you really want anyways. I think if this could be Gravenberch's long-term position, given his skill set and given what he does really well, I think that's phenomenal. I would worry more about when we come up against a team where we're not going to have, just the lion's share of the possession, and being a little more, when he has to be a little more defensive, a little more defensive action. I think that is where there are I think maybe are more question marks.
Yeah, that's a fair enough assumption, considering that he's a very progressive player. He's a ball-playing midfielder, it seems. That seems to fit his profile. It's just the defensive questions that are on it. Willem, I'll throw the same question to you. I'd imagine you'd echo an awful lot of Colin's points as well, that while Gravenberch can play there and seems to be able to play well there, we know it's Ipswich. And as Colin mentioned, the caveat of when we don't have the lion's share possession and he's asked to do more defensive work, how will he look? Would you feel that comfortable with Ryan Gravenberch being one of the mainstays in that double pivot position along with still pursuing an additional person in there. How would you feel about that? Or do you think Ryan Gravenberch is the answer?
No, I do still think we need to add another DM into there. I think it's more down to the fact as well that, at least to me, it seems like it, but I think from what a lot of reporters are saying as well and stuff, I think Endo's really falling out of favor kind of with Slot in the rotation due to it, because I just think he doesn't provide what Slot wants in there. As you saw yesterday, when someone doesn't do it, like he thought Kwanzaa didn't do with his aerial duels, he will just take him off and put Kanate on immediately for it. And I think Gravenberch can do a job over there. Like Colin said, the minute we go up against a team who will have the ball more than Ipswich had yesterday, there will be different questions asked of him. And I think as well, along with it in general as well, I think we might need to start looking at the left back side as well a bit more, because I was actually I kind of knew already that Robbo's time as well was coming, but I was also kind of really worried what I saw from Robbo on the side, and also in the way that we want to play now, building up from the back. I don't know if necessarily it's Robbo's strength either as well. But yeah, I think those two areas, for me at least, it became clear that what we kind of thought before from those two areas being areas that needed to be looked at all summer are still areas that do need to be added. But at the same time, I also thought there was loads of positives to take from the game yesterday. We looked really well. Yeah,
second half really showed how the adjustments could come in, and it was actually a really positive thing from Slot that he was like, look, Kwanzaa didn't hit his aerial duels, we brought on Kanate, that fixed the problem straight away, and if he's able to identify a problem that quickly and make the change, I think that's going to be one step up from him that will bring him a little bit more in favour in terms of tactical than, now don't shoot me for saying this, Jurgen Klopp, because I felt that Klopp left players on maybe a little bit too long, like gave them a chance in the second half for 10-15 minutes and then hooked them.
I think Klopp as well takes it, he takes the image very much also in from being a former player himself. So I think often, and from that period where he was a player himself, the mentality was often very much of you have to kind of play through it. So a lot of people who wouldn't maybe have necessarily their best game, he would still keep them on, or still kind of keep starting them just to try and see if they get their rhythm back into their best of form. But I mean, it's the mix between it, because he did that a lot, and at the same time, like last year, we had a load of times where we said, wow, when we come out in the second half compared to the first half, he's made adjustments and we looked so much better. So he had a bit of both.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. Charlie, there's just a comment here from Helior mentioned that a number 6 in a 4-2-3-1 system that we seem to be playing while out of possession with against Ipswich, you don't need to have the same payload or same workload as in a number 6 in a 4-3-3, which is fairly evident. With some weaknesses in Gravenberch's play, but those kind of get clouded out with McAllister alongside him. Would you sort of echo the same points as Colin and Willem in saying that he can be the answer, but he shouldn't be the only answer? Or do you think he should be the only answer?
I mean, the main issue with Gravenberch last season was the fact that he was a player who had an unbelievable game, then had a rubbish game, then had an unbelievable game, then had a rubbish game. You know, the talent has always been there for Gravenberch. Anybody who watched him last season, the ball sticks to his feet like glue. But also, he was very average in the first half as well. You know, pretty much everybody stepped up in the second half. So, I mean, you can go on Twitter. There was calls for him to get taken off at halftime, or like to even like change the system. And at the moment, we're being forced to play Gravenberch there, so it is what it is. He has all the right attributes for it. I still do think he probably is better in a 4-3-3 as like kind of like that left-sided 8 or right-sided 8, but he's not going to get that, so he needs to change his game. I can't remember who said it. We still need to sign somebody for that position. It has to happen, regardless of if Gravenberch, is amazing. We've got Endo, who clearly Slot does not want. I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but Slot only brought on 3 substitutes yesterday. I said in our chat, does he think he's in Eredivisie? Like, you only get 3 there or whatever. But,
it is also 5 subs in the Eredivisie, by the way.
He brought on 4 subs. Kanate.
Did he bring on 4?
Bradley.
There we go. Yeah, Kanate. Yeah, okay. I thought it was free, but still, I think it should be. I know it's early on, but like, just bring on the subs. It was just like a very, very even minuscule thing that I was even picking up on. But if for me, that kind of shows like Endo just isn't in this team. He is not playing. Get rid of him. Like I liked him, whatever, but he's just not going to be in this team anymore. Sell him for whatever you can. If you get your money back, great. He was good for us last year. Thank you for the memories. We'll see you later. And you still need to bring in that. I really don't like calling it a 6 because it's not a 6. It's a weird.
Yeah, it's not. It's like a 7.5 between a 6 and an 8.
It's really like a kind of a specialist position, which is going to cost a lot more money. But yeah, we still need someone. Gravenberch, I like Gravenberch. I was one of his biggest fans last year, and I hope he does. But he's still very young. He's still very raw. I don't really know if anyone knows his best position. So if this is it, amazing. But as I've said multiple times, if we sign 3 players this summer, we're challenging for the league. Now, if we don't sign anyone, we're battling for top 4. That's how like small the margins are, in my opinion. And any serious club should go out and sign a 6, even after an impressive half. But it's Ipswich. Like, come on, we should be smashing them 4-5-0. If Luis Diaz wasn't a moron, we would have as well.
I wouldn't really call him a moron for getting battered by the keeper. Like, it's just you with your South American Chuckle Brothers stigma and agenda that you have, man. That's all that is.
Hopefully Rigo isn't watching.
He actually sent Willem a message in the group chat, so he is actually watching. So because he was on about the bucket hat, he said you look like Johnny Depp with a fear loathing. After saying get him Stephen Garrett for me to get Charlie.
I'll take it. That's a nice compliment, like, especially
looking like Johnny Depp and fear
honestly,
loathing.
If I looked the way I felt inside right now, it would be a way worse picture than that. So I'll take it.
We'll take it. Gary Richmond here is mentioning that Richard, should I say, he's a playmaker from deep, is what I'm assuming. Does he mean what the 6 needs to be, so to speak? But if we take a look at, and I'm just going to share this because I wanted to sort of share Gravenberch's profile from the last season against Zubimendi's profile, and just sort of see where everything kind of lines up. So we'll take a look at this one first, and then I'm going to jump back in here and get rid of the brand because this looks like shite. And now there we go. So looking at that seems to be Martin Zubimendi's profile in the blue, and then you have Ryan Gravenberch's in the red. But based on what we've seen from what Slot wants from his double pivot CDM position, it appears that he from my opinion, and lads, please feel free to correct me if I'm wrong. From my own opinion, there's your answer, Charlie. From my own opinion, it seems that he wants somebody to be able to recover the ball and progress it either through passing it or driving the ball forward. One of the two. He either needs to dribble it forward, and as Charlie mentioned, the ball sticks to his feet like glue. So it may change a little bit. Obviously, his progressive passes and his duels and his defensive actions kind of seem to match up. His carrying is much more impressive, and his key passes seem to be as well. Just then to go on to where we would see progressive runs and progressive passes per 90. If you look at this then, just looking at where Martin Zubimendi lands, and then you have a look at where Ryan Gravenberch lands, almost in the same sort of echelon as a Declan Rice, who went for 100 million quid a year ago. So and then if we go and just take a look at another set of numbers, where we take a look at the defensive duels won and then possession adjusted interceptions, which adjusts per the interception. We have Zubimendi here, Declan Rice here, Kobe Mainu, Moises Caicedo, and Ryan Gravenberch, along with Adam Morton. He seems to kind of fall into, numbers-wise anyway, even though he didn't play the position, a similar profile to what everybody else was saying we needed. We had everybody wetting themselves over Adam Morton, people saying Zubimendi was the one, as you said yourself, Willem. Declan Rice was apparently noted as the one by some in the chat, and he seems to be sitting on a similar level to them. Now, eye test is also everything as well when it comes to these sets of numbers and stuff like that. So it really depends on what you look at in regards to
I think the main issue, kind of looking at that, is a sample size.
yeah. But that's
Comparative.
last season, though.
Exactly. Gravenberch didn't really play that much. I mean, what's his minutes? Maybe like
1,200 against Zubimendi
Yeah.
is near 3,000.
Exactly. So first of all, sample size is off, and I think my main issue with it is currently Gravenberch and McAllister are very similar players. Like I think when you cut everything back and maybe you don't go so systematic, they're so similar. Now I think Gravenberch has the more he has the skills maybe to turn in more to a bit of a, I don't know, like a Fabinho. He has the profile, is what I'm trying to say, where I feel like McAllister is just with his height, his size, he's kind of you can't really do much more else with him. Like he's what he is. So I think the numbers, yes, they look good, but at the same time, the sample size is a big issue, and it's a brand new system at the end of the day. It's like I still think that he wants a left back who is a centre back, basically.
Yeah.
So I think as soon as that happens, maybe it frees both of the midfielders up more, and you do kind of go into that back three and risk it more. So I think looking at the system currently isn't really. Not that it's not ideal, but we don't have the players to play his system. I mean, you literally look at his team last season. He's got 4 centre backs. He's playing Hanko at left back, and he's playing Gertruder at right back, and then he's got his 2 centre backs. He's effectively playing a back 4. He is not going to be able to do that at Liverpool because we have Trent Alexander-Arnold. So the next kind of best thing is to basically play a free. Like a weird 3-2 and let Trent kind of do what he wants, which in the second half it looked a lot more like that. So it's maybe not so much with like Simicast, but again, I think that left centre back positions or that like left back, left centre back position is going to be massive. I think that'll really dictate how our midfield to play in front.
A question for you, so Charlie. Would you consider, if we got a left centre back rather than getting a DM? Now, I'm not saying that alone. So if we got a left centre back and then let's say hypothetically went for a DM in January, would you be more comfortable with that than getting a DM now and not getting that left centre back position sorted? Do you think that'd sort of free up the midfield a little bit better, or do you think it has to be a DM?
If that left centre back is absolutely world class, aka if that left centre back is Bastoni, then yes. You can't just go out and I'll accept Inacio for you, Stephen. But anyone can't, like, even like the likes of Hincape and stuff like that. It's like, are they gonna come straight in there? I think you need someone who's going to be nailed on at that left centre back, and there's not many. I mean, one I wouldn't mind if he's got injured today. Actually, Colwell, I think he'd suit that position really well.
Yeah.
Somebody similar to that. So, I mean, if they go out and sign Bastoni, I'll be the first one to say fair play to Richard Hughes, but that's not going to happen. So we can just bin that idea straight away.
Fair enough. And I don't think it'd happen here. I think an Inacio or a Colwell, as you mentioned, will probably fit that role more because they seem to be playing a left back as a centre back, essentially. They're playing as a left back as a centre back, if that makes sense. Willem, a hypothetical I'll pose to you. Because we have a Trent Alexander-Arnold there and he wants to kind of play more of a back 4, you'd need sort of a more defensive back 4 that's there to allow you to free up Trent. And it just so happens we have a young fella there in Conor Bradley that seems to be more defensively sound than Trent. And that's not saying that Trent is a bad defender. That's just saying that Conor Bradley is a better one. But Conor Bradley doesn't offer what Trent offers in the offensive side of it, if that makes sense. Do you think a move to push Trent into that double pivot to play alongside a McAllister or a Ryan Gravenberch, and then moving McAllister or Ryan Gravenberch further forward and allowing Trent to be sort of that deep line playmaker? Or do you think it has to be a specialist DM for that position?
I think it has to be a specialist DM more to kind of help solidify the central area. Like you can afford getting beat on the wide areas if centrally behind it you are still set up really well. That is something that Fabinho, along with Van Dijk and with Matip, used to make sure would be set up very well once Robertson and Trent used to push up back in the day. And I think now I'm trying to remember the question at the same time, mate. I'm really sorry. I'm functioning on my last brain cell.
So basically what I was asking was if we moved Trent into the double pivot and allowed a more defensive right back in Connor Bradley, could you see that working if we got a specialist DM, or could it work at all?
Because I don't think Trent works in midfield at the end of the day, because he doesn't get the time and space on the ball that he would get from a right back inverting into midfield. He has actually more control and more of a way of playing in a more comfortable way for himself from that area. Look, if it was 20 years ago and people were still playing a 4-4-2 system, he would be the perfect right midfielder you would put in a 4-4-2 instead of a right back. But that position just isn't there. So I still think at right back, it's the absolute best position to keep him in. And we just have to solidify that DM area and that left back area, because we can essentially allow us to kind of play three at the back and kind of push him up on that right hand side area. And I think that plays to our biggest strength at the moment.
Yeah, no, it's fair. It's interesting to see, because I think the team is going into something of a positionless kind of a formation where Trent just go do what you want, get the ball and create, which is what he did yesterday. Because as he said, a right midfielder option would be perfect for him. Where did he play the assist from? The right midfielder position, and just very beautifully weighted a pass in behind the left back for Salah to run in on. Colin, I'll throw a somewhat similar question to yourself. Seeing the numbers and everything that was there, do you feel like Gravenberch could grow into this position a little bit more? Charlie mentioned sample size and that it's quite small, and I completely agree with that it is small. But at the end of the day, the sample size is there, and it's what we have to work with at the moment. Where do you see the need being more specific? Charlie mentioned that he said that if we went out and got somebody of the ilk of Bastoni, that he'd be fine with that it would essentially free up the DMs a little bit more, and you wouldn't necessarily have to rely on them, if I'm assuming what Charlie meant was right. If you could, where do you think the specific superstar has to be? Do you think it should be an Anasio, a Hincapi, someone like Colwill, maybe even a Lukeba, as Carter loves to mention him too? He's also another option. Or do you think it has to be a specialist DM that has to come in?
You know, as you guys were kind of talking through some of the differences in scenarios, I think the one thing that is sort of striking to me is that I don't feel like, if Arne Slot has this team in his mind, and it's if that was a puzzle, I don't know that we have the pieces that fit exactly in the way that he would want them. I think Charlie kind of alluded to this. It's not. I think there are almost some guys at the moment playing in places that are not ideal, but I don't know that that's necessarily a bad thing. I think sometimes kind of being forced to play, with what you have, I think Trent's a great example of this. I don't know that there is a direct comp in what Arne Slot's perfect idea of a team would be for what Trent's skill set necessarily is, or where, to William's point, where he does get on the ball enough. Because I do think that is an issue. I think him just saying that he's just going to play in midfield, I think doesn't allow for the idea that getting him on the ball constantly is the most important thing. So I almost have a little difficult of a time trying to your question, trying to decide where is the number one place that I think needs to be strengthened, because I'm not totally sure yet how all of these, how all of the pieces that we currently do have are going to be playing out over the course of whether it's the first 6 months or the first season, whatever that might be. I suspect that I suspect that probably the highest need is a left center back or a left back that is kind of more shades of a left center back. Just because I like the Tsimikas and Robertson dynamic of both of those players doesn't seem to fit exactly with what maybe what a final evolution of an Arne Slot team would be. That's my guess for what would be the best. But again, like, if we're seeing players kind of step into roles that they wouldn't have necessarily, I'm thinking about, like Gravenberch and even like Curtis Jones stepping into what we're, seeing as like a little bit deeper. We haven't seen exactly what those performances look like yet. Or exactly, if those are going to be kind of depth, like depth at that position that is really needed. I would guess that based on the approach for Zubimendi, that's somewhere that he really feels like is the first need. But I still feel very unsettled about where the team is currently and kind of what is our best step to evolve positively from here.
Yeah, no, I know what you mean, and I see where you're coming from. It's a difficult one to assess because if we got a left-sided centre back that can play a left back, Bastoni, Inacio, Hincape, Pacho would have been a good one too. It kind of then solidifies the midfield more because there's extra protection there, meaning that they don't need to be out and out specialists. Whereas then if you get your CDM, you don't need to address the left centre back role because then you have a CDM that protects the middle, and you can get, as William said, you can get beat down the sides if you know your centre is fine and rock solid.
And one thing that I've seen in looking through Arne Slot's teams is that he's not unhappy to be unbalanced in certain sides. So if there is a left center back sort of player, it almost can end up looking like an unbalanced like 3 and then 3 with maybe Trent further out on that right side rather than it just being perfectly symmetrical. Like, if you're drawing it up ideally on your tactics board, it doesn't always function in that way. And then that's the one thing. That's part of what the midfield predicament is as well. It's like, we say dual sixes, but he sees it more like one, they're constantly moving. So it ends up being sort of unbalanced 4-3-3. But, if we're just drawing it up, it's 4-2-3-1. Like,
yeah, it's positionless. It's essentially it's Cruyff's to pronounce it correctly, Willem, I apologize. His total football analysis is where it kind of came from. I'm sure Willem will correct me on the pronunciation if I got it wrong. But it's one of them it's kind of like if the Bulls triangle offense way back in the 90s, if anybody's old enough to remember that, and I'm showing my age there, where everybody moves and everybody's moving and it's constantly creating opportunities for everybody and it's pulling the defense left, right, and center, up and down, and that's essentially the way it goes. And Jamie, to answer your question, it's definitely Charlie, it's not me.
It's definitely Steve, and I was about to say mine's too patchy.
Just to let everybody know, Zubimendi just scored. Prick.
No way.
And they're still losing, so
they're still losing 2-1. So
hilarious.
Look, it is what it is. He was promised the sun, moon, and the stars, and we'll see if that's going to be offered to him, because if rumors are to be true, it's not being offered to him. Also, a bit of news that was mentioned as well, and we'll jump on to the next topic. Where is it? I have it here in the comments at the start. Just a couple of thoughts on Jared Branthwaite being 4-5 odds to join Liverpool by the bookies. He's 6-4 to stay at Everton. I wouldn't trust the bookies myself. That's one way to look at it. But it is quite funny to consider that Joe Gomez might be on the way out and Jared Branthwaite, according to the bookies, might be on the way in. We've heard no rumors of this. We've heard no reliable sources whatsoever mentioning that at all. But we were interested in him when he was 17 years old and at Carlisle back in 2019, and that was reported by Simon Jones of Mailsport. So that'll be an interesting one. And as it stands currently, betting on Branthwaite to join Liverpool has been suspended. He's no longer on the list anymore. So do with that information what you will. But I'll throw it over to the panel for a bit of chat and a bit of fun. Charlie, he's basically your neighbour at this point. Well, used to be your neighbour. You're now out in a different part at this point. You will. But it's, if you could, would you, if it was a two-way street, if you were to sell Joe Gomez, who seems to want to be looking for first-team opportunities, and you got 40 million for him, would you then throw 70 million at Everton for Jared Branthwaite, considering it's a 30 million pound round deal?
Not 70. I'd do an absolute push 60 mil. And that is a massive stretch. However, Everton are never going to sell him to us unless they absolutely have to. And I think they would rather sell to Man United for less or the same price. So, mate, as I've said in the chat, at one point, Room and Amarin was literally like 1 to 5 to sign for Liverpool. Like, absolutely take nothing from the betting odds. They're all automatic. They all go off betting patterns. So all that's happened there is Sky Bet have seen that a few people have put like £1 on, and it's all gone down. They're like, okay, it'll just automatically do it. So betting odds are not, and it's definitely not happening. I can tell you that right now.
Yeah, no, it's I don't think it's happening either. It's just an interesting conversation. Look, we've Steve Spearman though mentioning that it's definitely going to be Jared Branthwaite. We submitted a £70 million bid. Steve Spearman, if you don't know, is head of data analytics, Will Spearman's cousin on Twitter. For those that don't know who he is, if you want to look him up, it's a good giggle. He's about 500 followers and he just posts nonsense. It's brilliant. It's a great watch if you want to read it. Before we jump on to the next couple of topics, I just want to say, do a little call to action here of make sure to like and subscribe if you haven't done so already. Make sure you have your notifications on for all future streams and videos so that you never miss out. If you're currently watching over on Twitter, we've just over nearly 4,500 people currently watching, both from YouTube and Twitter at the moment. Please make sure to jump over to our YouTube channel, hit subscribe, and you'll see all of our other content there, and make sure your notifications are on so that you never miss out on it. But to move on then to the next topic is essentially, is it panic time? Because obviously, as Charlie mentioned, we've not made any sort of movement either. Willem, you've been one throughout the summer that's been very insistent on the fact that it's unacceptable about the lack of movement, and I've tried to err caution on that and err patience on that and say that judge the window at its conclusion. We seem to be getting closer and closer to the conclusion, and you seem to be right. But I will not concede that point until the window is closed. But I'll throw the question over to you at the moment. Is it time to panic?
I mean, as you know, I've pretty much been panicking since the end of June anyway. So, like, as in, I was already annoyed because I straight up, I've been very much of the opinion of, I understand it, that Arne Slot wants to have a look at the squad, and he wants to have a look, and he wanted to have a look at everything and how it fitted out. But at the end of the day, his first approach in the transfer market was a DM, a target that we all knew from ages ago. That was going to be the case. The club knew that was most likely going to be a position to look at. I mean, and as well at the same time, it's not like he never watched us before actually agreeing to become Liverpool coach as well. Mm-hmm. So I think he has done plenty of enough background checks as well to kind of go through this. And then reluctantly, I started becoming more calmer towards the end of July and beginning of August, thinking, okay, I'll believe him now. I'll start believing the whole words of we'll get busy in August, we'll get all done. Been busy in one sort of sense of we've made a couple of sales.
Yeah,
but
he didn't say if it was outgoings or incomings that we'd be busy in, so he's not wrong.
No, and I mean it's just the way like in general these deals have been working. So with the whole Zubimendi saga as well, we obviously got an indication that he wanted to come. The thing is, if we would have straight up paid the release clause, we pretty much wouldn't have given Sociedad that week to turn his head around and make him stay there at the end of the day. Because if we immediately pay up the clause, there is no time in between for him to change his mind. We see now with Mamardashvili as well. There's some reports coming out now as well that there's some struggles coming through in that negotiation side as well that we're apparently also being quite difficult to deal with. And it's also the fact that we're supposedly working under a data-driven system that's supposed to bring out multiple targets. When Klopp was out and he wanted Brandt and he wanted Götze, instead of, I think Mane and Salah were who the two players were that you wanted. We had alternative options, and those were Salah and Mane. And now all of a sudden, in the same supposed kind of system and model, we're supposed to believe that there aren't any alternative options, despite this sort of model that we selected. And that's becoming very hard to believe. And even though we've had, like, this summer has been probably one of the most frustrating ones since 1-2 years ago, actually, where we also had the whole midfielder debacle. But I think it just comes down as well as, like, if you look over the past 4 or 5 years, we've had about 4 different sporting directors, and it's always an issue, and it's always something, and it's either finances, it's something not being deemed, like, it's not being deemed opportunistic enough, and we've gotten to a point now as well where from where FSG took over when we were in the situation we were in, and with the price that will come up, we've grown back a lot over that time. And it feels to me that we've slightly outgrown the model that they are still wanting to run. And what I keep wondering is, will they adapt their model to the kind of sustained success at the top, but to, like, really keep on going for the big ones? Because we've won a couple of cups, but it's been 4 years since the Premier League now again, and it's been 5 years, nearly 6 years now, and since the Champions League one as well. And those are, at the end of the day, those are the ones that we all want to win the most.
Yeah.
And I think that is just, at least for me already, for a while it was crackling through, but I think now everyone is slowly kind of getting to a point where it's like, okay, how come there's something again? How come we're again at a point where it's always difficult for us? And that's pretty much it. I don't really have much more to add on it, to be honest.
Yeah. No, it's fair. No, I agree with you. I can completely understand where the frustrations are coming from, but as well, so the frustrations that come from the lack of movement on contracts and stuff, I can understand that. But something that I can't understand currently at the moment is how, and I can understand to a degree of how no movement happened until August. Like, you can understand why. Like, okay, Slot needs to come in and assess the squad. That's cool. There's obviously a massive change in coaching staff. We're a step behind that as well at the moment, because we're going into a brand new regime. So this would be a transition year, you'd assume. But we already finished third last season and possibly could challenge for a title this season if slight tweaks are made and a slight addition is made here or there. So it's being on the precipice of that and then just not moving forward. I completely understand the frustration behind it, and from where I sit with the lack of movement on contracts specifically for the big three is, as much as I hate to say it, the blame rests on Jurgen Klopp's head and how that whole situation transpired. And the reason I say that is because last summer Jurgen Klopp announced to the club in November, I'm done, I'm gone, I need to go. He's not a man that makes split decisions quickly. He would have been thinking on that for a while. Last summer would have been 24 months out from when all three of them were due to have a contract renewal. Normally, that doesn't, the contract renewal doesn't take place until they're closer to the 12 months than they are the 24 months, purely because, as we've seen with Anthony Gordon, if the head's been turned, you're like, okay, we need to lock him down for a while. We need to make sure that he can't go anywhere, so we'll sign him to a bigger deal, meaning that we can charge more if he tries to want to go, or some form of that. Same with Zubimendi, that's happened currently, and everything like that. Oh, we've lost Colin. Then when it comes to him leaving, he would have known somewhat or had doubts last summer. He's not going to be the type that will sit down in front of Trent, Salah, Verge and say, yeah, I'm going to be your coach for the next number of years. I'm going to renew my own deal. I don't see him sitting down if he has any doubts of that and maybe possibly fibbing to them, though. Go on, William, you have something to say?
Yeah, no, so like I would just say the one kind of counter argument to it that I personally still wouldn't put. I can understand the point of saying it is partly you could blame this to Klopp's decision and the timing of it. Yeah. But I think at the same time, we've had 3 different sporting directors in the last 3 years. We literally have had Hughes now. We've had Schmadtke last year.
It's not even about it's not even about the transfers. It's purely just those 3 contracts.
No, but the contracts come down to the sporting directors as well. So they're the ones normally.
They would have wanted assurances though. So if you're Salah and Virgil are a little bit different to Trent because they could be like, look, we're in the twilight of our career at the moment. We're probably going to play another 3-4 years and that'll be us done. Trent is probably sitting there saying, I could play another 10. I need assurances on who the manager is going to be, where the club direction is going to be, and what the situation is going to be 12 months, 24 months, 36 months as you go down the line. And then if Klopp can't just sit there, because he's going to want the assurances from Klopp himself. Klopp wouldn't be able to just sit there and be like, I'm going to be here. And then 3 months later, and then they sign the deal. And then 3 months later, he's like, I'm out the door. They'd all be like throwing toys out the pram and be like, you've led us on and you've dealt in bad faith. Like, it can go both ways. And I think the club was left between a rock and a hard place with it.
What I kind of more meant with it is like, it's also important from a sporting director perspective to have that stability in there, because like eventually what ended up happening with Ward, we had Julian Ward for 1 year. We had 4 players, I think, in Firmino, Milner, all the other one. Keita and Ox all running out of a contract. We're not getting the fee for them. So it's also as in we've not been operating in the smartest way either over the last couple of years in things that we normally would be doing. We supposedly have a sell to buy model, yet we've barely been selling apart for the summer. And it's also we've been letting these contracts run down. It's been a sign that we've seen because last year it was Matip and Thiago. Then the year before that it was Bobby, Milner, other players. We've all let them run down. Yeah. And their roles are differently, obviously. Like I think we all kind of could accept at the time that Firmino, as much as we loved him, it was probably a good time to move on. Mane had just moved on recently. Before it as well, after asking to leave the club. It can happen, they're understandable. But for it to happen multiple years in a row where you're letting these contracts run down to so far down, that is something that is not a well-run approach. And it doesn't, like, I understand that players will run them down, but a lot of players will often extend their contracts already when they've already still have 2 or 3 years left. Cole Palmer had 7 years left on his deal, extended another 2 years.
Yeah, but like that's fucking
but players do it. Like they do it at the end of the day. If they want to stay at the club and they want to really go on an approach for it, you can extend those contracts, and it doesn't.
I'll use the Cole Palmer situation a little bit. If your employer is stupid enough to pay 3 times the wage of anyone else, and it's like, do you want another 2 years? You're gonna be like, yeah, please.
The thing is, these aren't just any other players. So they're not just any other players. These are all 3 best players. Like, it's not even up for debate. If you ask any Liverpool fan, who are our 3 best players, them 3 are getting named, and then the 4th one is Alisson Becker. You know, we have a very clear system, and we have been guilty of underpaying players for years. I don't care if it's the right price. Top clubs now pay their best players the best wages. Like, we're going to have to accept that we are going to have to do that now. Like, and yes, we've been moving to it eventually, but why shouldn't Trent be asking for 350 grand a week? You know, why shouldn't Virgil be asking for a similar amount? These 3 players are the best players in the world in their position, and they have been consistently since they pretty much joined the club. You know, since Salah and Van Dijk, they've been the best right winger and best goalkeeper in the world, and they have not been displaced. Like, anyone with a functioning brain can see that. Go and pay them. I don't care. Give them a 2-year contract and give them 350 grand a week each. That solves your issue. Like, and yes, I know it's saying, 350 grand is an easy thing to do, but it is. Like, we're in a world of football now where, like, Luis Diaz he might even still be on it, is on 60 grand a week. Andy Robertson has been on 60 grand a week. Andy Robertson has been on 60 grand a week since he joined Liverpool.
No, Andy's on 100.
Regardless, he has been for consistently for about 3 years was the best left back on the planet, bar none. We have been criminal of underpaying players, and yeah, sure, whatever, people are happy, but you've let your 3 best players get down to 1 year, and now you're just not signing anyone. First of all, sends them a terrible message that when Klopp announced it, we didn't have a replacement already. Now, if you can say to them, we had the whole thing with fucking Ruben Amorim and all the other crap. Like, regardless if we were or not, we were interested in Ruben Amorim. We were. There was too many reports to say we weren't. I still think he was our first choice, and we just couldn't get a deal over the line, so we had to go with Slot, which, again, a great decision, but get it done earlier, because you could have went to them players and said, look, here's the new project. We're prepared. You know, here's Arne Slot. He's going to be the new manager. Instead, we left Arne Slot till about, 2 weeks before the season ended. So now these players are going on international duty and kind of, you know, looking at their options like they rightfully should. The way the club has been ran for, as Willem said, the last 3 years, it as like a not footballing wise, but as like transfers go and as, you know, contracts go, it's been an absolute mess. And I said on the spaces, you know, I've always been someone who sits on the fence with FSG, but they're hiring these people, you know. Yeah, does John Henry know about this? Probably not. You know, not probably not. He obviously doesn't, but you're hiring people to do this for you. And I'm starting to think, you know, you're hiring the wrong people because it's inexcusable what they've done. And now the likelihood is we're not going to sign anyone in a season where we have a new manager. So he's going in with somebody else's team and expected to get top 4. Like, it's mental, and we're paying this. It's not like we're paying him fucking minimum wage. You know, this fella's on hundreds of thousands of pounds, probably millions. I went on a tangent that I can't remember what the original point was, but the club is being ran dreadfully at the moment, and it has been since Julian Ward took over.
That deserves a banning right there. No, I'm not even going to entertain that.
Eden Hazard, that famous right winger. Idiot.
That's genuinely left me speechless.
I'm just happy I can't read at the moment.
It says Mo has never been the best right winger. Riyad Mahrez.
Yeah, I already regret hearing it. You should have just left it. That was it.
Yeah, Riyad Mahrez and Eden Hazard. No, I'm grand, thanks. Yes, that's why both of them are currently out of football and over in Saudi Arabia, while Mo Salah is currently still banging in 20 goals a season in the Premier League.
Mate, Eden Hazard's not even playing football. He's sitting on his couch watching Salah.
Oh, God.
He's probably sitting on his couch watching us.
Yeah, that's exactly what it is.
Actually, that might be his burner account.
Definitely is. It's kind of like Kevin Durant's burner account. But but it to be honest, look, I've been one of the fence sitters as well, Charlie, for FSG, in that the club operates within its means, and I understand that. And I'm not saying the Trent shouldn't get paid that, but Salah, after bonuses and everything, gets about £1 million a week. I wouldn't say he's necessarily underpaid with that. Well, maybe he is, but I wouldn't necessarily say he's underpaid with that, considering. I'd imagine the bonuses make up an awful lot for it. But and a loophole behind that is because we don't have to declare bonuses for FFP or PSR, which is why probably our bonus system is a little bit better, or probably way better than a lot of teams. Whereas the issue I have with the salaries, and this is more so due to future-proofing the squad and issues that may arise in 5 or 6 years' time, is paying salaries that much will then snowball into paying when let's say, for example, the next signing that comes in says, well, you have him on that, why can't I be on that? And then it just snowballs from there.
And then we say to them, are you the best player in the world in your position? No, then fuck off. That's what you say to them.
Completely.
Because it as I said, the reason why you pay these this is because they are far and clear the best players in the world. Yeah. So I see what your point is, but it's not like we're like Man United where we're playing.
No. We're not paying a Casemiro 400 grand a week. Yeah,
exactly. It's different. I know where you're coming from, but if you do it right, it's not like we're going to give Darwin Núñez 300 grand a week. Like, mate, you can stay on that medium wage. And if you
you're headed for Joe Harris if we paid him 400 grand a week.
Shouldn't even be what he's on now.
I'd make everything on a bonus system. Then he really has to depend on himself. Like, at least prove it that way.
Fair enough. But the reason I'm saying that I worry a little bit about the salary side of things is because the PSR is changing. And I don't know if a lot of people know about it because it was alluded to a while back. It's changing now that I think they're trialing it this year, and I don't know if it's going to change to it permanently, but it's looking more and more likely that it is. That they're doing a anchoring system where it's a certain percentage, a certain multiple times of the lowest team's revenue or TV revenue, something along those lines. So essentially, if it was last season, teams would have been allowed to spend anything up to about 450 million in the transfer market. But the thing is that your 450 million budget for that, it's essentially like a salary cap that works in the NBA, the NFL, and everything. So you'd get 450 million to spend on salary, transfers, and agent fees. That's essentially what it's being capped at. So we have a salary range per year of about 126 million pounds. We would then essentially have an additional 320 million to spend on transfer salaries and agent fees. But it's not so much what it does to us, it's what it does to everybody else. It's City currently have about 300 million on their salary. United the same, Chelsea the same, which would then completely limit what they can spend on it. Meaning that if we start offering players this money, it will snowball to a degree and it will develop into a degree. And it's every new player resets the market. Like we've seen it year on year on year. And you see it in other sports as well. That's where my worry comes from, is that do we handcuff ourselves in 4 or 5 years' time when this is now the implementation? Or essentially because we're so low on it, does it even matter at that point? Because we're only about 140, 150 million a year in salary, where you have other teams that are on nearly 400 million a year, the likes of City, the likes of United, the likes of Chelsea, that kind of stuff. That's my only worry with it, but I'm sure it won't necessarily need to matter. Colin, both Willem and Charlie have mentioned about their shaking faith currently in the sporting director at the moment, how the club is being run the past couple of years, and that problems that were seen as small problems a couple of years ago have now festered into bigger problems, and it seems to be a consistent thing that's happening over and over again. What does Richard Hughes and Michael Edwards have to do by the end of this transfer window, or even this one in January? What do they need to do to sort of reestablish faith from the fan base, in your opinion?
I mean, it has to be all three of of new contracts. I think that that's the only true non-negotiables. And I only say that because I guess I'm building in all of the unpredictability of trying to buy someone else's player.
Yeah.
Which we've run into constantly, it seems like. It does feel very much like, time in a transfer market is a flat circle. And we seem to always be back at the beginning, even when it's seemed good for a while. We always seem to be back in the same place we began, which is like, we've been panicked about the transfer window for so long now, for the entirety of the window, that now I'm just like back to being like, okay, like I don't know if it's acceptance or whatever it is, but I'm like, okay, well, like there's a season to get on with still, and like we have players that are still great, and we can still win a whole lot of games. I don't think that that's putting us in the best possible position to win titles or to compete in four competitions, or even to have us get through the season healthy enough, for the amount of games that we're going to play. But I can't, none of us can control that necessarily, and it does suck. Like I also have been an FSG fence sitter. Like I don't think that what they, that their ideas are inherently wrong. I just don't think that they're necessarily have been executed in a way that gives any of us, real long-term confidence, or short-term confidence, given the actions in the transfer window. It's not great. I don't love it. I don't feel super good about it. But at the end of the day, like I am just gonna support our team, and like, we're gonna win game. Like support them through wins and losses, and like that's it. Richard Hughes.
Well, we clearly see what Charlie's
that's a
freak
smart
bit
guy
is
there.
towards. Yeah, that's a very smart guy there, right?
Wow. I don't know. It's just like it is really annoying, and I don't disagree with anybody who's like really down on it. I just don't know that being that down on it helps me love this football club like anymore, or like helps me be a better fan. So I just try not to like live in that headspace as much.
Yeah. No, I get it. It's what's funny about that is the way you're kind of just displaying your emotions towards it is kind of an acceptance of this as the norm, which shouldn't be the case in my own personal opinion.
It does suck. Like that part of it is absolutely annoying, and I don't think that it's long term going to be successful. But what can you do?
Yeah. Well, the way that I look at it is that we've Edwards back, we've Julian Ward back, we have Richard Hughes in. That's obviously very pally with Michael Edwards. That I would imagine shares very much a similar, if not almost identical, ethos to Michael Edwards. And it's you have to assume that it's not just Richard Hughes out there with his dick in his hand, fucking getting transfers over the line by himself. I'm sure Michael Edwards is operating on it as well, while operating on getting the second club, because that seems to have fallen flat in its face as well, with Bordeaux falling through the cracks. But it's worrying times, and there's a lot to do to regain an awful lot of trust and an awful lot of faith from the fan base. And I am going to continue to sit on my fence until the end of the transfer window, where I will then make a decision on how the transfer window went and everything that went with it. And I will either land on one side of the fence or the other at the end of that.
All I will add to it with the second club part as well, it does also come back again to the same part where I was mentioning before, where everything has to be opportunistic. And it's the same when they were buying Bordeaux. Bordeaux were in the situation they were in. The oh God, how to call it, the town hall, mayor hall, or like at least the town of Bordeaux essentially asked for a bigger sum of money to also take over stadium rights and stuff and everything, meaning it cost FSG more, making it less opportunistic. And then it turned out it fell through. And it always seems like it's just these kind of things at the end of the day. And it always it has to be opportunistic to us, and we won't budge. And that is just kind of
a question that I posed to you though about the Bordeaux thing.
Mm-hmm.
French league itself and French football itself seems to be getting worse and worse. And since Mbappe has left, the TV deals and the money coming into the teams has hit the floor. And that could be where they look at it as not an opportunistic signing, because it wouldn't have been the initial payment of the club itself or the initial purchase of the club. It's how they could see money coming into it in the future. Because at the end of the day, it is a business decision to buy a club. You need to be able to see how profit and loss will happen over the next 5 to 10 years. And due to the turmoil in Liga and the second division and the third division, do you still seeing how there's teams in Liga that are near declaring bankruptcy because of the lack of TV deals? So how would it be in the second and third division of it as well, where Bordeaux, a fantastic team that had Zubimendi in their academy at one point, they have a great academy, and there was even a rumor that we were looking to poach one of their 17-year-olds from the academy after they went bankrupt on a free transfer, which is ruthless in its own head. But would that not have been a factor in it as well, or do you think it was just we don't want to pay this much up front? It was more
I think it does come down more to the paying up front as well, because they at the same time still hold a similar interest into the Boston Celtics. Now the Boston Celtics has been announced for a couple of months ago. They are up for sale as well, which as well, from what I've seen from the NBA, Boston Celtics fans are not too happy with that, seeing as their current roster is well over the luxury tax, and that would be cut down massively. So that would also kind of just be another issue.
They can just get rid of Jason Tatum and they'll be fine. They win without him. So.
Well, but there's still more to it as well. I think as well, it gets forgotten. Bordeaux is quite a massive club. As well, just in France as well. Obviously, the club where Zidane obviously came from and stuff and everything. A load of other players as well. They are a big club, and I think the fact that you could have taken them over when they were in League 2 instead of the French First League actually also gives you that little bit more time, because they're having the TV deal issue right now. but that is more primarily for the first division. The second division, like, at least if it's kind of similar to here in Spain as well with the second division, which I don't know, there's not a lot of TV time for it. Let's just put it that way. Anyway. So it doesn't, in general, it doesn't really tend to happen anyway. So I don't think from that aspect that it was going to change much in the income aspect. And it actually gave you another year or at least 2 years, depending on how quick you were expecting to promote again back into League One, where that situation also kind of stabilizes again. And it is just like it was when, and it's not in the same scale or in the same manner, but that club was another club that they would have been able to pick up for very cheap, and they would have been able to turn it into a very valuable asset, most likely over the next 5-6 years. But, you know, they've chosen not to do it. But then now you don't hear anything about a second club, but there's not, because if you look around a bit, is there any club where there's almost like kind of an opportunity of buying it or an opportunity of really getting a good deal out of it? There isn't. So it goes quiet on that front.
Yeah, it obviously wasn't going to be a quick turnaround kind of a thing with the multi-club, and it might take a year or two, maybe a bit longer, but it all really depends. And it's not looking good for the PR side of Liverpool currently at the moment. But as I said, I will be sat on the fence until the end of this transfer window, and then I'll make my decision at the end of that, depending on how they do. If they sign all 3 guys back to contract extensions and they get a signing in by the end of the window, I will be sat on the fence of they did a good job. And obviously, depending on the signing, not somebody like, fuck it, we get a keeper that we can use in 2 years. I wouldn't count that as a signing that can impact us this year. It would be a fantastic signing. However, I'd want another one on top of that can impact us this year. Specifically,
I think really quickly, I think if I would be shocked if they get all 3 over the line. Personally, I think Virg is nailed on. You cannot let go of Virgil van Dijk, and I think he wants to stay at the club. And then I think it's up to the other 2. If Salah, which I think he will, I think if he thinks that he can have another 2 years, you know, at the top level, which I don't see why not, the way he looks after his body, you know, even though he's a bit shit like Ronaldo, you know, he could probably do a decent job in a decent European team still. You know, players are getting older and older. Adding on to this, that's why selling Alisson or even considering Alisson going in 2 years is an absolutely ridiculous thing. But that's another topic.
But that's if he wants to go, similar to Thiago
exactly,
Silva.
And it's if they want to go. Now, at the moment, it seems like Trent wants to go. So I'd be shocked if they signed all 3. Hopefully they do. And I think at the moment, they're just nailed on. I'd be baffled if they let him leave. I think then Salah's next and Trent. I just got a bad feeling that Trent's going to go. And I think kind of the only way is if you do improve this team and have a go at a title run, which then goes on to you need to sign a centre-back and you need to sign a midfielder. Like, so for Richard Hughes to save face here, he needs to either sign, you know, 2 world-class players and keep 2 of them, or I think regardless, even if they let one of them go, there's people are going to fume anyway. So he's being brought into a shit situation, which I do kind of feel sorry on him about, because it should never have been let to get down this far. Like, we've let our 3 best players get down to the year in the contract. Like, it's just a stupid decision going. So what can you do? But also another one, I just want to say, this Jared Branthwaite thing is feeling very similar to Zubimendi the more I think about it. Zubimendi come from nowhere. Nobody knew we were interested in him. It was a random in the know Twitter account, Backseat Barry, that said Zubimendi. And 2-3 hours later, everything got brought on by journalists, and nobody said anything for them 2 or 3 hours. No one's saying anything, and they have been very quick to shut things down this summer. Look at the Luis Diaz thing. About half an hour after that broke, they were all over it. They were all over it, saying not happening, not happening. Now, I still think it's not happening, but the fact that no one said anything and it's now been about an hour, you know, if it goes on for another hour, I'll be thinking, you know, maybe this just someone's leaking stuff on Liverpool Twitter who just knows everything, and that person needs to be found because everyone else is a moron.
Yeah, because if anything showed this transfer window, the likes of Fabrizio Romano still haven't a fucking clue about us. It's just nonsense updates consistently from him, that non-update updates that he likes to tout out. And realistically, the only time you should listen to him is when he says, "Here we go," or there's an
Liverpool are
exclusive.
moving. Liverpool are alive. Liverpool are doing.
They're
this.
interested. They appreciate. They are moving. They're looking. They're investigating. He's a thesaurus.
I expect that's the new one as well.
Yeah.
I expect.
I understand that.
Yeah.
Is another one too. Fucking idiot. I hate this.
There is an understanding.
Yeah.
Oh,
Basically, and he's ruined transfer windows for me personally, because everybody, like, 8 years ago, that Mbappe deal would have been announced and everybody would have lost their minds, and it would have been, oh my god, how did nobody see this coming? And now it's been a year saga in the making, and then the second he was signed, everybody was like, oh, okay.
I know we were just joking about it, but one of our admins on Twitter, about while we've been doing the stream, from Fabrizio Romano's podcast that was just released, his words: there is still movement in the transfer window for Liverpool. If there's an opportunity in the market, expect Liverpool to do something. You can't write it.
Yeah, there's movement for me. Yeah, there's movement for me to go and try and marry Sydney Sweeney. If there's an opportunity to do so, I'll go for it. But I can fucking guarantee you she'll say no and get out of my house. So, like,
Fabrizio GBT, like, is a really good idea. Like, we could really get some good content there.
I reckon that There We Land fella has more information on us than Fabrizio does, to be honest with you. That's the way that I look at it. But guys, we are going to leave it there. We've just gone over the hour mark. I want to thank everybody for joining us today. Near over 7,500 people currently watching across YouTube and Twitter, so make sure to like and subscribe if you haven't done so already. If you're currently watching on X or Twitter, make sure to jump over to our YouTube page and hit subscribe and hit like and see all of our other content there. And make sure you have your notifications on so that you never miss out on your content. But thank you guys so much for joining us. I hope everybody has a wonderful week ahead of them. We will be back again tomorrow at 7:30 p.m. and we will make sure to see you guys there again. So thanks for everyone for sticking around, and we'll see you guys tomorrow.